It's a celebration of America's freedom. Welcome to the Marc Scaringi Show. The Marc Scaringi Show is your place for a weekly discussion on making America great again. The important political and legal issues of the day, a celebration of the Constitution, and traditional American values. Marc is a practicing attorney, a former senatorial candidate, a Donald J. Trump-endorsed delegate, and a defender of the Constitution. His goal? To put America first. And now, celebrating America's freedoms, here's attorney Marc Scaringi.
Well, good afternoon. Welcome to the Marc Scaringi Show here on WHP 580 iHeartRadio and News Talk 104.1 FM and 1600 AM at WEJS. And we're happy to have you here on the show today. This is your place on the dial for constitutional conservatism. This is where we talk about the important political and legal issues of the day from the perspective of putting America first. And we're here on a beautiful Father's Day weekend, so we'll say hello to all the fathers out there and wish them well on this celebratory weekend for them and for all they do for their families. And by the way, if you'd like to watch prior podcasts of the show or take a look at some great merchandise we have, including our popular Right to Bear Arms muscle shirt and the We're Glad You're Our Neighbor, Just Please Don't Kill Us yard signs and T-shirts, go to the MarcScaringiShow.com website. And for more political and legal news throughout the course of the week, don't forget to follow me on Twitter, Facebook, and YouTube. Well, the media are apoplectic today about President Trump having a rally in Tulsa, Oklahoma tonight. In an interview this morning on CNN's Anderson Cooper's show, White House correspondent Jim Acosta, he said the Trump administration is hell-bent on having these rallies despite public health concerns voiced by Dr. Anthony Fauci and others. Acosta said the Trump administration officials are saying that if people can rally and protest concerning the death of George Floyd, then they can rally for President Trump. Now, CNN's Acosta explained that was like comparing apples and oranges. So according to CNN, Trump supporters have less rights than Black Lives Matter and Antifa supporters. CNN believes that Black Lives Matter and Antifa protesters were morally correct to gather in large groups despite the public health risk because they have a worthy cause. But Trump supporters are morally wrong for gathering in large groups to support the renomination and reelection of President Donald J. Trump. And interestingly, we saw some of that here in Harrisburg in the state capitol just a week or two ago when our own Governor Tom Wolf marched in a protest in the city of Harrisburg to protest the shooting death of George Floyd. And there were certainly more than 250 protesters in that march that our governor participated in. And there was certainly no social distancing involved in that protest featuring our governor here in Pennsylvania. And the governor subsequently said that it was a mistake that he made. It was the wrong thing to do. He wasn't. Well, let's see. He pretty much declared that he supports the protest and the cause of the protest, but he admitted that it was his physical presence there contradicted his stay-at-home order that actually was still in place at the time. He had terminated the order, I think, about 2 days after his protest participation in the city of Harrisburg. So he admitted that he was inconsistent. That was the word that he used that I was searching for. It was inconsistent of him to march in that protest. Yet earlier he had admonished all of us who participated in the rally to reopen Pennsylvania protests, also on the Capitol steps in Harrisburg, and admonished us, saying that we were putting the public health at risk by our participation in our protest to reopen Pennsylvania. But apparently he wasn't putting the public's health at risk when he marched in the protest to protest the shooting death of George Floyd. So the height of hypocrisy by our own dear governor, Tom Wolf, here in Pennsylvania. And interestingly, that came back to bite him in the you-know-what in a recent lawsuit that the Secretary of Health, Rachel Levine, filed, the Commonwealth filed against the Carlisle car show in Cumberland County, where the Carlisle Car Show had put forth this extensive and comprehensive COVID-19 mitigation and prevention protocol so that they could continue to have their car show, but to do so in a way that is safe and follows the guidelines recommended by the CDC and others. Yet the governor and the Secretary of Health tried to stop that car show, and they filed a lawsuit in the Commonwealth Court. And there was a very interesting exchange between the Commonwealth Court Judge Ann Covey and the attorney for the Department of Health, in which Judge Covey essentially was excoriating in her kind and polite way. She's an outstanding judge and a great legal scholar, but she honed in, if you will, on the inconsistency that the governor had admitted himself a few weeks earlier, and really going at the attorney for the Department of Health, saying, "Well, how can the governor march in a protest event in the city of Harrisburg that had more than 250 people?" And did not employ social distancing, and many of the protesters were not wearing masks. At the same time, the Commonwealth is trying to stop the Carlisle Car Show from holding its annual event that may have more than 250 people, but certainly does have all kinds of COVID-19 prevention and mitigation protocol in place. And you see what happened with that case. They reached a settlement, and the Carlisle Car Show continues and wasn't shut down, even though that was the initial request made by the Department of Health. So I think that's just interesting, and that the governor's own decision to march in that parade, if you will, protest, really kind of really hurt him in a subsequent lawsuit that was filed. And it's wonderful to see the Carlisle Car Show continue in operation. I'm glad that's happening, and it's great to see the courts actually put the governor to the burden of proof, if you will, because they've made so many averments and allegations about the severe public health risk if we don't have these near complete shutdowns and lock-ins. Yet it doesn't seem that they were able to meet the burden in that lawsuit. So that's an interesting development, and we see Jim Acosta on CNN this morning pretty much doing the same thing that our own Governor Tom Wolf was doing, and he's castigating and denouncing Trump supporters for wanting to attend a Trump rally that does have COVID-19 precautions in place. They're checking the temperature of those who wish to attend the event, so they have some monitoring and protocol in place. And CNN and the major media, though, they're not happy with the Trump supporters for gathering in large groups to support the president, but they portrayed the protesters and rioters who've protested and in many cases ransacked in many of our major cities. They portray those individuals as political heroes, even though shouldn't they be condemning them as well for potentially spreading COVID-19 and putting the public health at risk? Not so much. So I guess it comes down to where you stand politically. And according to Governor Tom Wolf and according to the major media in our country, if you are on the left and if you are supporting and promoting left-wing political ideas, it's okay for you to gather in large groups and protest and potentially put the public's health at risk. But if you are a Trump supporter, or if you support the reopening of Pennsylvania and you gather in a large group to exercise your First Amendment right to speak out on those issues, you are somehow morally wrong, and you are now putting the public's health at risk. So an interesting irony that has developed that has kind of really put the governor in a tight spot in some recent litigation. We're going to talk more about what's going on around the country with the protests and the riots and the Trump rally When we return from this brief commercial break, you're listening to The Marc Scaringi Show.
You talk about race relations.
Arguing solves nothing.
This is complete insanity.
Opening a dialogue
And I'm sick and tired of it.
and expressing one's concerns is a much better way. And the conversation starts here. News Radio WHP 580. Now, more of Marc Scaringi on News Radio WHP 580.
And welcome back to the Marc Scaringi Show, your place on the dial for constitutional conservatism. And this is the place where we talk about the important political and legal issues of the day from the perspective of putting America first. And we're talking about the irony of Governor Tom Wolf marching in a protest event in the city of Harrisburg to protest the shooting death of George Floyd. The protest included hundreds of Pennsylvanians, and the governor was there marching shoulder to shoulder with them, and later admitted that his participation in that protest was inconsistent with his own stay-at-home order, which prohibited large group gatherings at the time. Now, the order was subsequently rescinded. But that decision of his hurt him in a recent lawsuit that was filed by the Carlisle Events that operates the car show in Carlisle. The governor, through his Secretary of Health, tried to shut that event down because they believe that it would cause a public health risk. So they filed a lawsuit in the Commonwealth Court, requested what's referred to as an injunction or a stop order to get a judge to issue an order of court to stop the Carlisle events from continuing. And it looks like a deal has been struck. The injunction will not be entered. The car show will continue. It's going on right now as we speak. And the judge presiding over that particular hearing, Judge Ann Covey, really cross-examined, if you will, almost, the governor's attorney, and focused in on the inconsistency of the governor of the Commonwealth participating in a large group and potentially risking the public health, but yet trying to stop the Carlisle Events from having their car show, even though Carlisle Events has a very comprehensive COVID-19 mitigation program in place. And we've got some callers already, so we'll take a call from Kate from Harrisburg. You're on the Marc Scaringi Show.
Hi, Mr. Scaringi. I'm calling about a situation my brother has found himself in as a result of the state order to force the nursing homes to admit and keep COVID-positive patients. He's only in his 50s, but he was unfortunately last year diagnosed with dementia and now requires nursing home care. So he was, after a long wait, finally placed into Spring Creek, which, unbeknownst to my family, was COVID-riddled. And he, within a couple of weeks, contracted COVID and fell. So he was admitted to the hospital, and they determined he was okay from the fall. They sent him right back into the nursing home while COVID positive. And then a couple weeks after that, he developed COVID-related sepsis, which was extremely bad, blood clots in his lungs and his legs, and he had to get daily shots in his stomach. He miraculously survived. June 9th was sent right back into the nursing home, now in another unit, now in the dementia unit. I just think it's unconscionable. I want there to be some traction with the federal government to look into this. Pennsylvania and 4 other states have this order, which I think it's either grossly irresponsible or maybe even sinister. Because if you're so concerned about public health, how can you knowingly admit COVID-positive people right back into the hospital when our hospitals have not been overwhelmed at all? And there were plans to set up temporary hospitals, which would have been a perfect alternative for these people to recover from COVID.
Wow,
That's
Kate,
kind of my story in a nutshell.
you really have explained the issue. You've explained the issue very, very well. a much better job than I can explaining the horrible negative consequence of the decision of Secretary Levine to order nursing homes to accept into their homes as residents individuals recently released from hospitals who'd been infected with COVID-19. And I'm glad that your loved one is doing okay now. But oh boy, really put.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
No, go ahead.
Oh no, I was just going to say. I mean, he's better in the sense he no longer has sepsis. But as you know, we cannot visit him at all. We haven't seen him since March. His wife only saw him in the parking lot when the ambulance brought him back from the hospital. So, I mean, he has completely lost his will to live. You know, I am fighting to, for us to be able to see him because I'm afraid he will die he knows enough what's going on that he must be wondering where we are. Why is he so alone? It's absolutely devastating, and I feel like this is a fatal policy, and it's directly as a result of this order. I mean, within a couple of weeks, he was COVID positive because of this order. Half the patients in that home are COVID positive, or half the staff is COVID positive, and I think there's over 100 COVID cases in that nursing home. I'm not blaming the nursing home. I mean, I'm not sure what's going on in there because we can't visit. But this order is forcing them. They have no choice.
Yeah,
I blame the order.
And as do I. And it's disconcerting to learn a few weeks ago that our Attorney General, Josh Shapiro, has opened this criminal investigation into these nursing homes. And from reading his press release, he's clearly focused on the administrators of the nursing homes because of the high rate of death, the COVID-19 related death in those nursing homes. But it's not the nursing homes. It's not the administrators of the nursing homes. It's the Secretary Levine's policy forcing these COVID patients into these nursing homes. It's so clear. It's as bright as day to me. Not in a million years will the Attorney General investigate the Department of Health. It's just that will not happen. But if you want to look for a potential culprit, that's where you need to look. And you're right. We have an excess of hospital beds and ICU beds all across Pennsylvania. They were never fully utilized, even at the peak. I can remember listening to the CEO of the Lehigh Valley Health System saying we have 40% capacity even at our peak. So there were so many beds available, and even more are available today for the Department of Health to work with these hospitals and nursing homes to ensure that the nursing home residents are properly isolated in all of these available ICU beds and other facilities in our medical facilities across the state. That's really where the Department of Health should have been focusing its efforts in separating residents from these nursing homes they're obviously the ones who are most at risk of having a serious negative health consequence or death as a result of COVID-19. That's where all of the vast resources of the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania should have been focused. Yet Secretary Levine was spending most of her time shutting down hundreds of thousands of Pennsylvania businesses and locking millions of healthy Pennsylvanians in their homes. So I feel for you and your family, and it's such a tragic consequence of these horrible government policies.
Yeah, is there anything we can do? I mean, I have been in contact with some officials in the government, and I'm writing a letter to the Secretary Azar because I think, like you said, the state's not going to take care of it at a federal level. Is there anything we can do legally even?
Well, I would suggest, Kate, that you call my law office on Monday, and we can continue the discussion there.
Okay. I just don't want this story to die down with everything else going on because literally people have died and are continuing to die, and it's still going on. June 9th, he was readmitted into the dementia unit. So, it's just so tragic and devastating.
It absolutely is. I mean, the overwhelming majority of COVID-19 related deaths in Pennsylvania occurred in our nursing homes. In southeastern Pennsylvania, it's about 70%.
Yes.
Statewide, it's over 60%. And the Department of Health has the statutory obligation to ensure the health and safety of the residents of our nursing homes. And that's where the deaths occurred. It's just, and it's heartbreaking. And you as a family member, you're blocked. You're prohibited from even gaining access to your loved one in the nursing home. It's almost as if they're in a COVID-infected prison, and they can't get out.
That's right. I feel like he's incarcerated. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
That's the heinous government policy that we have. But, Kate, give our office a call on Monday, and we'll talk further about it. But thanks for calling today.
Okay. Thank you very much. Bye-bye.
Yeah, I appreciate that. So the COVID-19 debacle of our state government continues, and what a heartbreaking story that we heard from Kate from Harrisburg, and we were just talking about how the Department of Health and Secretary Levine, how they were using their time and resources to try to shut down the Carlisle Car Show, which is an outdoor event that already has all of these COVID-19 prevention and mitigation protocol in place. Yet that's where the Secretary of Health spends her time and her resources, and she lost. I mean, she settled the case. She sued to stop the car show from occurring. She settled the case. The car show's still occurring. She lost. That's a loss. But why did she spend all of that time doing that when the people in our nursing homes are dying of COVID? That's where her attention must be. And in fact, not her attention, because she's doing harm to those residents. We have to remove Secretary Levine from that position. Of course, that's never going to happen. But she's the one, through that order that she promulgated very early on in this pandemic, that has done so much harm to the infirm elderly in our nursing homes across Pennsylvania. It's truly a disaster caused by a government policy, and they will never admit they're wrong, and they haven't even changed the policy to fix it. And we'll talk more about this issue and other issues across the country when we return from this brief commercial break. You're listening to the Marc Scaringi Show.
You hear it when it happens. WHP 580. Let's get back to the Marc Scaringi Show on News Radio WHP 580.
And welcome back to the Marc Scaringi Show, your place on the dial for constitutional conservatism. This is the place where we talk about the important political and legal issues of the day from the perspective of putting America first. And we've got some other callers, so we'll open up the phone lines again. We have Dave from Mechanicsburg. You're on the Marc Scaringi Show.
Thank you, Mark. Two quick things. First of all, Rachel Levine was down at the Carlisle Car Show, peering around to see what, I guess, trouble she could cause this week.
Oh, was she really?
Yeah, I was at the show this morning, and that's what I heard. But I wanted to talk about something else, the controversy over the signs at the Pennsylvania bakery. Did you hear about that?
I did.
The
Boy,
Trump signs there?
That is so sad. Yeah. Go ahead. Yes, go ahead.
Yeah. So what happened was, basically, this story, the way it was covered, I wanted to give you some insight. So Rachel Shank Warmer is a very nice lady. She's the sales manager for Pennsylvania Bakery. So Christine Vinman, the reporter for the Patriot News, who does stories on racism, you know, the ones that tell us how racist white people are, or especially how racist Trump supporters are. She goes into Mrs. Shank Warmer, a very nice lady, 8 days ago, and she sits there for like 15 minutes, and Mrs. Shank Warmer gives her a list of like 20 quotes of people, you know, who support the First Amendment, people who believe in freedom of speech and that. So exactly how many of those 20 quotes did Mrs. Vinman and the Patriot News use? Try zero. Not one single quote. She took up Mrs. Shank Warmer's time, but she did not use even one single pro-First Amendment or pro Trump, quote. Instead, some of the quotes she used, we don't want to go to a store associated with white supremacy or hate black people. You know, in an 8-inch column, Mrs. Vindman mentioned the word racism 4 times and 2 times white supremacy. She even wrote that the notion that supporting Trump automatically doesn't mean someone is a racist. Really? Would Mrs. Vindman go into the black community and say the notion that supporting Obama, it does not necessarily mean that someone is racist? Give me a break. This is why people don't trust the media. Mrs. Vindman could have used over 100 angles on these signs, but she chose to racially backslap the Pennsylvania bakery. And it's disgusting. And I guarantee you, Mrs. Shankwarmer will never give her an interview or anybody with that stinking lousy Patriot News an interview again, because they stink. Thank you.
Well, yeah, stay on the line, Dave, for a second if you can.
Yeah.
Because I want to get more of the facts out behind that story, so our listeners get all the facts of that story, because I think they're very important. But yes, I would agree. I do agree. Penn Live has in the Patriot News, they have a particular narrative that they push in all of their publications, and it appears they were trying to do that with regard to Pennsylvania Bakery. I was interested to read that Penn Live put out a couple of articles on highlighting various black-owned businesses and trying to encourage Central Pennsylvanians to patronize black-owned businesses. So I wonder if they will do a corresponding article on white-owned businesses and encourage Central Pennsylvanians to patronize white-owned businesses. Of course, that will never happen. But with regard to the Pennsylvania Bakery, isn't it the case that it was a building or an apartment building that was adjoining to the Pennsylvania Bakery that displayed a Trump sign or a poster in a window, and people got the wrong impression that Pennsylvania Bakery was promoting Donald Trump? Is that how that started?
You are 100% correct. That's 100% correct. That's exactly what happened. It was the place next to it.
Yeah, and so Pennsylvania Bakery, they're not involved in politics. They're involved in baking
That's right.
Beautiful and amazing cakes and cookies of, and I've had them, and they're outstanding, and I shouldn't have as many as I do. But in fact, I might run over there this afternoon and get some for friends to celebrate. It's such a fantastic bakery, and the baked goods are so good. But they're not political. They're not involved in politics. It's a bakery. It wasn't their Trump sign. They had nothing to do with it. They just want to bake their cakes. And I guess some busybody saw that and just assumed incorrectly that the bakery was promoting Donald Trump. And I guess they wrote on their Facebook that they were, of course, racist and white supremacists. That goes without saying. Anybody who supports Trump is automatically categorized that way. And that's what started this horrible reaction. And Pennsylvania Bakery, they have to endure all of this horrible negative press and criticism, people calling them racist when they had nothing to do with the Trump sign in the first place.
Right. And Penn Live just amplified the ridiculous, absurd comments that were online. Anybody, if Penn Live would have done their homework, they would have known. Of course, these weren't even the article that Shankwarmer gave, as you said, was very apolitical. They're in the business of selling cakes and pies. They're not interested in promoting candidates.
Right. Well, thanks for that call, and I'm glad, Dave, you brought that to our attention, and because our listeners and people in Central Pennsylvania need to know the facts and the truth, and how the media can really harm a business, and it's a shame. So we'll say to our listeners, everybody go out to Pennsylvania Bakery today and buy a nice cake or a pie.
Yep, thank you for supporting them. Thank you. God bless. You're doing a great job. Thank you, Mark.
Thanks, Dave. I'm going to get Patty from Hershey. You're on the Marc Scaringi Show.
Hi.
Yes, Patty. Go ahead.
Hi there. I just have a comment in regards to the hospitals with COVID-19.
Let's hear it.
I'm a frontline employee, and I have to say, COVID-19 is real, and the hospitals, we have patients. And to assume that we were not overloaded, but we had them and we still have them. And it goes up in waves. And I just want the Pennsylvanians to know, yes, it's real. And we have all age groups. It is not just nursing home people. That is just a joke. We have patients.
Hey, Patty, let me ask you a couple of questions.
Pardon?
I'm glad you. Let me ask you a few questions. I'm glad you called. You're a frontline healthcare worker, and of
Correct.
course, COVID-19 is real, and it can be a devastating illness, no question about that. And so many Pennsylvanians have lost their lives, and that's obvious. That's certainly a horrible thing. But let me ask you, what I assume is, since you're in Hershey, are you with Penn State Hershey?
No.
Oh, okay. What healthcare facility are you with?
I would rather not say at this point.
Oh, okay. Well,
But it's an acute care.
I was just trying to understand whether or not the healthcare facilities in the greater Harrisburg area ever, during the peak of the pandemic, ever became overloaded with patients to the point where they did not have hospital beds to treat them or didn't have ventilators to use in the treatment. Are you aware if that was ever the case?
We did have beds and we did have ventilators, but see, the virus, learning the virus as time went on, we realized that we try not to ventilate these people because it's very difficult for them to get off the ventilator. So we try to do the best we can to manage them without ventilation. But, sometimes there is no choice. But to take care of these patients, it does take time because of the PPE that we have to have and protect ourselves. So, it takes a lot of time to do that, to get suited up, then to clean, that type thing. But it is real, and it does go in spurts. Like, we'll see an influx of patients, and then it will drop off a little bit, and then we'll see more, So,
I'll tell you, I'm sorry. I was looking at the Department of Health has a dashboard. I don't know if you've looked at that, where you can look at the hospital, and you can see how many. Or actually, no, that was the Penn State Hershey. They had their own dashboard on their website, or was it the Department of Health?
Right.
Now I don't know which. But I was looking at it kind of during the height of the pandemic. And I noticed that I think they had 8 COVID-19 patients and 0 ventilators in use. And the point that I was making then, and this was only a few weeks ago, was Penn State Hershey is a massive complex. There are 10,000 people who work there, and they had only 8 COVID patients. And that it's not. I'm not saying that COVID's not real. I'm not saying COVID's not a pandemic. But Penn State Hershey had considerable capacity for additional patients. They only had 8. And that was during the time when most of central Pennsylvania was still in the yellow zone. And I just thought that was the ability of our health system to absorb substantially increased numbers of patients was there, and is obviously still there today. That's the point I was trying to make.
Okay. I just think that's a snapshot in time because it changes on a daily basis. So, perhaps when that was being posted was at that time, but every day, I'm telling you, it changes. And just learning about the virus changes daily too. I mean, we get notifications every day about different things that we need to do, or now we don't have to do that, or, whatever. It's a daily thing. That's why departments have briefings every day about how to care for these patients. Now, I can't comment
it's the real
on
deal.
and I can't comment on discharge policies or anything, like when that girl was calling about her brother. I know that we can't keep patients in the hospital for long periods of time. So we do try to discharge them, but they're always medically stable. It's not like we discharge them and they're critically ill. So,
You know what I mean? You, Patty. I really appreciate you calling. It's very interesting what you're saying, but I've got to take a commercial break or they'll cut us off. But Patty from Hershey, thanks for calling. You're listening to the Marc Scaringi Show. Stay tuned. We'll be back right after this.
Instant information gratification.
WHP 580. Now back to the Marc Scaringi Show on News Radio WHP 580.
And welcome back to the Marc Scaringi Show, your place on the dial for constitutional conservatism. And this is the place where we talk about the important political and legal issues of the day from the perspective of putting America first. And we're spending a lot of time today on COVID-19, and that's okay. Although that's not the way we intended to put the show together. That's where the callers have wanted the show to go, because they're making some very interesting points and some critical points, talking about we heard from Kate from Harrisburg and the situation involving her brother in that nursing home. And that's one of, I'm sure, very many very tragic stories about nursing home residents in Pennsylvania who are dealing with COVID-19. And certainly in part due to our own Department of Health's policy with regard to requiring nursing homes to accept as residents individuals recently released from hospitalization because they were infected with COVID-19. And we heard from a healthcare worker in Hershey who was giving us some important facts and information about COVID and how the inpatient treatment ebbs and flows as the pandemic ebbs and flows its way through central Pennsylvania. And I just was able to take a look at the Penn State Hershey website, and they have 13 inpatient COVID-19 positive cases right now. Four patients are currently in critical care, and 4 are on a ventilator. Now, this is public information that Penn State Hershey puts on their website. And as I was saying to Patty from Hershey, the point I was trying to make is we certainly have much more capacity to handle an influx in patients. And even during the peak of the pandemic in Pennsylvania, we did not reach our capacity. We didn't even get near our hospitalization capacity. And that was one of the reasons that the governor and the Department of Health put forth as to why we needed to have a shutdown and a lockdown. They were concerned that our hospitals would be overrun and we wouldn't be able to treat COVID-19 patients. That never happened, and it didn't even get close to happening. And I think those are the facts, and the facts speak for themselves. And it's a point I've been making on the show and, of course, in the litigation. But so far it's fallen on deaf ears in the litigation, but we'll see how that develops. So we've got another caller on the line. We have John from East Berlin. You're on the Marc Scaringi Show.
Hey, Mark. Great to talk to you. Thanks for taking the call.
Sure.
When you mentioned hypocrisy in terms of His Excellency Tom Wolf, I have to say, from a sentimental standpoint, after a while, this hypocrisy incites fury in a lot of us. But that's not really why I'm calling. I do have a couple questions, and I know you can answer them. Number one, I saw on the liberal news about Lebanon County. As far as I'm concerned, they're being chastised for, actually doing the right thing and opening up and defying Tom Westerman Wolf's order. Of course, they're saying, I guess Rachel Levine is saying that, the cases have increased. I don't believe that for a minute. Number two question I'd like you to answer, if you would. I haven't heard any more on Tom Westerman Wolf's impeachment that Representative Metcalf and 23 others signed off on. I don't know where that's at. And also in the Supreme Court, where the state legislator ended up, sending that resolution. And,
right.
So where is all of that? I would like to be updated. I'd rather hear you than hear me. So.
Okay. Well, with regard, we'll take the last point first. And as you know, the General Assembly passed H.R. 836, the concurrent resolution to terminate the disaster emergency declaration issued by the governor on March 6th, and then renewed on June 3rd. And members of our General Assembly were hopeful that would be sufficient to terminate the governor's executive orders, all of which emanated from the disaster emergency declaration. The governor said not so fast, and that doesn't terminate his disaster emergency declaration or the orders. The governor is pointing to a provision in the Pennsylvania Constitution that requires concurrent resolutions to have his signature to have lawful effect. And the Pennsylvania Supreme Court has intervened. You may know that the Senate Republican caucus that was behind the resolution, they sued the governor in Commonwealth Court under this kind of ancient writ of mandamus, where they are trying to get a court to compel the governor to issue an order terminating the disaster emergency declaration. And what did the governor do? He turned around and filed suit in the Pennsylvania Supreme Court under King's Bench jurisdiction, the same jurisdiction that we used in our first case that we filed to get the case before the highest court in Pennsylvania. The Pennsylvania Supreme Court has accepted that case, and they are currently now in the pleading stage. So I can't give you an update on anything substantive that has come out of that court yet, because they're still looking at the briefs and considering.
Well, how long could this potentially drag out? Can you give me that answer?
Well, I think a couple of weeks. I think it'll be fast. They were very fast in my case. I think we got a decision within 2.5 weeks of filing. It's quick. I think the justices on the Pennsylvania Supreme Court know that it's of the highest importance and significance that they issue a ruling one way or another on this matter. They recognize that because they accepted it. And in order to get the Supreme Court of Pennsylvania to accept an original filing or to take up a filing from a lower court, they have to agree that it is a matter of significant public importance. Basically, it's got to be acted on soon. So I think you're going to get a decision very soon in that case. But let me address the issue on Lebanon County. Russ Diamond, State Representative Russ Diamond, has been a fierce advocate for opening Pennsylvania and challenging the governor's orders. They have an excellent state senator, Dave Arnold, out there. They have a terrific district attorney in Pierre Hess. They all spoke out in opposition to the governor. Some are saying now that the governor is exacting vengeance on them. That very well could be, because so many of these decisions are politically motivated. Now, Lebanon County, by the way, how close is Lebanon County to Penn State Hershey? I mean, how close is Palmyra to Hershey? One of the data that Secretary Levine is always talking about in determining whether a county moves from red to yellow, yellow to green, is the availability of hospital beds in the county. Well, Lebanon County, why would you arbitrarily limit your analysis to the hospital beds that are available in that county when people from Lebanon County can very easily go to Penn State Hershey? It's a conglomerate. You can throw a stone from parts of Lebanon County to Hershey.
Yep.
And so that is an example of what is arbitrary and capricious, words that I've used ad infinitum in the lawsuits, although no one seems to be listening. That it doesn't make any sense. They held Perry County back. Perry County, one of the most rural counties in Pennsylvania, not too many hospital beds available in Perry County, but you go right to Harrisburg Hospital if you're in Perry County. So these things don't make any rational sense.
Yep.
But yet we're living under edicts and dictates from a governor and a health secretary. And we've tried to stop them in court, and we'll continue to do so. But we've regrettably come up empty-handed to date. But I thank you for your call, and you raised some very valid points.
Okay, thanks, Mark. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thanks for calling. Appreciate that. Yeah, so we've heard from lots of callers who are expressing some frustration about the state of Pennsylvania and how our own government is dealing with the COVID-19 pandemic, which, I must say clearly it is a pandemic, no question about that. And yes, COVID-19 is certainly very real. It's affected, it's led to the deaths of, regrettably, of thousands of Pennsylvanians, no question about that. And it could be I'm getting the music now, so I guess I'm going to have to wrap things up. And I want to thank you for listening to the Marc Scaringi Show. Tune in every Saturday at 1 o'clock here on WHP and WEJS. And have a wonderful Father's Day weekend. All the time we have today. Take care.